Welcome back to Proof of DeSci, the show where we explore how crypto is transforming science. And today we're going to be diving into a side of DeSci that doesn't really get enough love. It's community building, creative culture, and the wild world of DeSci influences. And we've got an incredible lineup for this episode. We've got this investor or that investor who's been decoding Web3 for the masses and has some sharp takes on the future of decentralized research. We also have Andrew Hemingway, a tech pioneer and strategist who's been watching DeSci from both inside and outside of the system. And of course, we've got Albert and Morgan from ValleyDAO bringing the founder's perspective on what it actually takes to build a community around biotech, IP tokens, and memes, and DeSci in general. We're going to be talking about how to build movements that last, why culture might be the real unlock for DeSci, and what trends you should be paying attention to right now. So grab your headphones, hit record on your thought experiments, and let's get into it. So guys, welcome once again. Let's kick things off. I'd love to get some quick intro from That Investor and Andrew. What initially pulled you into DeSci space? What kept you here so far still? And what's your take on the kind of DeSci status right now? We can start with That Investor maybe.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for having me on. I'm excited to be here, excited to get talking about DeSci and the community side of everything. I think it's super important and, of course, like you said, underappreciated. What brought me into DeSci a few years ago, I was working with a good friend, it's Joshua Jake, and he was showing me Vitalik's article on decentralized science. And given that I had worked as a genetic analyst in a lab out of Boston a couple of years before that, I was super intrigued with the idea of decentralized science and just bringing anything that we could on chain. So I just kind of started diving in, realized there wasn't many people talking about it, and realized that I was in a unique position where I could kind of break down some of these complicated ideas from the scientists into a more normie-friendly speech. That's how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say thank you to having me on and thinking of me to include me in this conversation. I think that there's my story maybe is a little longer, so I'll just give you the TLDR on this. Coming from sort of the ecosystem side of Web3 and growth themes at some of the larger L1s, Tron and Avalanche. I started to work with some smaller protocols, and one was on this was a privacy protocol, which actually was just acquired by Circle. And was working on that side and was thinking about and was really focused on managing or maintaining privacy when you bring data on chain, and how is that done? And I started talking to that was sort of the opening. I just started talking to a bunch of DeSci projects because in the health space, thinking about sensitive health data and how do we advance and unlock the benefits of health data being on chain, but simultaneously maintain privacy and sensitivity. That was sort of my introduction. I started talking to a number of these projects, really got pilled basically by a few of them, and just started digging in. And that was just last year at some point, and pretty soon after that, like CZ and Vitalik, were together and kind of spoke at a DeSci event together. And then I was like, just sort of seeing how the culmination of the technology, the space where science is at the moment, and just like the convergence of all of these things, I just sort of was watching it and saying, I think that there's going to be a massive shift here and a massive opportunity. I think in addition to that, when we look at Web3, when we look at crypto, and certainly That Investor is like better at speaking about what I'm going to bring up right now. And so he should definitely weigh in on this. But there was, of course, this initial phase of crypto, which has been a lot of speculation and a lot of hyper focus on perhaps trading. And I think that we are seeing the shift into utility. And for me, there's no greater market where utility is going to play such a massive role than in DeSci. And so, all those things sort of combined at the same point, started talking about DeSci, started getting a little bit of, traction, and just kept saying, hey, look, this is something that's real, and let's try and elevate the space. And have been really fortunate to just meet a lot of great people along the way. And that's sort of what led me into it and why I'm excited about it.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. Albert, Morgan, maybe you could give us and our audience a brief info as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew and Patrick, aka That Investor, for joining on. Also, just like a super short notice as well. Super inspired by your stories about how you got into DeSci. For me, there's definitely a lot of similar themes in how I got into this space. I mean, there's just so many. My background is in biotech, particularly climate biotech, and that's like the focus of ValleyDAO. We try to use biology a bit differently from biopharma, where we use biotech to solve climate challenges, to create more healthy foods, to decrease emissions, to remove plastics from our oceans and our materials, and so many other things. And this space that we're in, like the climate biotech particularly, is suffering from a lot of challenges, from a lot of like technology bottlenecks, lack of collaboration, and just the difficulty to scaling up a lot of these solutions. And my thesis all the time was that there needs to be like a better framework for collaboration across academics, across students, between companies and government and so on, while at the same time like offering some sort of incentive structure for these people to come together to not only fund ideas, but also support in incubating them and bringing them to market and making them more successful. And seeing DeSci slowly taken off back in late 2021, I just naturally gravitated towards this space and just started a random Discord server, and slowly, people started joining, and then things started to get a little bit more serious, and then we had a project which is today like ValleyDAO. Of course, there are more details there, but just to offer my answer to the same question as well.
Awesome. And Morgan?
Yeah, I think my answer is honestly, I found DeSci to combat my loneliness in academia. I was doing research at the time and I didn't have a particularly great experience. My lab was not the healthiest of working environments. There was a lot of kind of backstabbing. There was like lab politics, people that had been literally situated in the same institution, in the same building, in the same lab, couldn't even have a conversation together because they disliked each other so much. They were stealing reagents and like raw materials from each other. They were like arguing about the most trivial shit. And there's me as like the youngest person in the room thinking like, wow, these are the people I looked up to. These are the people I thought I wanted to be like. Really, that kind of just tipped my world upside down a little bit. And I was like, shit, where do I go now? And so, those are some of the maybe superficial problems. But of course, there's much deeper problems of why labs are the way they are and why a lot of the incentive structures lead to the types of people succeeding and the types of outcomes. And all of that got me really interested into surely there's a better way. And yeah, it turns out there is. Or at least there's a significant, like sizable community of people that are trying to build the alternative solution. And yeah, I think that was an easy kind of conversion for me. So I went straight in at the deep end, started contributing, and actually started out doing the community building and communications. So I think this is a nostalgic space for me because I've taken a step back from that role and moved on to something else, but still community holds a very special place in my heart.
Wonderful. I'm honestly not even just surprised, but I'm just so excited that DeSci brings people with such vast experiences and different areas of expertise with different backgrounds together. And that's what's fantastic, just to me. Side note. By the way, Patrick and Andrew, whenever you're going to be talking about something and you want to pin a tweet in a nest, please feel free to do so. And Andrew, maybe you can go next. You've been early to movements that blend science, decentralization, and other narratives, even across other ecosystems, because I believe that you've been heavily involved with Ava Labs as well. How do you think DeSci stacks up right now in terms of real traction versus hype?
Man, that's a loaded question. So let me just give you a little bit of background. So I'm from New Hampshire, and because I'm from New Hampshire, I was introduced to Bitcoin in like mid 2010. So like super early. And the reason why was because there's a movement there called the Free State Project, where they were hoping to, secede New Hampshire from the United States. And they were going to they were looking for a currency. That was one of their big problems. And then, of course, the white paper drops and they were like, okay, well, this looks like a possible solution. I saw Bitcoin at 6 cents early. So that was sort of like my, like, I don't know why, but I just sort of been around people who are really interested in innovative technology and just sort of on that like bleeding edge of things. And so that has, led me, of course, into these spaces. Tron was a great opportunity. I was the head of the ecosystem team there. We added, I don't know, over 100 million users in my time there. Launched literally thousands of projects and saw, I think, if I can say this the right way, how not to build a community. That was a very was done in the very, very like wrong way and very top down. If any of our listeners know anything about Tron. And so, once I sort of was like understood what was happening there, I was very happy to move over to Avalanche, where Avalanche was like was building an ecosystem and was really allowing the community to be able to drive the growth and drive that innovation. And there I saw how there are certainly emerging trends that that are optimized, especially for certain communities. Where I think I really started to understand the power of community was when I was able to start to work on smaller protocols who are like have 5 people in a Discord, and they're like, how do we go from 0 to 1? And that was that's when you have to really be careful about identifying sort of what is already moving. And I think what I'm really good at and what I've just been able to be fortunate to be able to do is like identify things that have natural or like organic momentum. And I think when you're building a community, especially from 0, because if it's a new brand, a new protocol, a new project, you don't have any momentum. And one of the things that you desperately need is you need momentum. And so the way that you gain that is by locking on to larger trends that are hopefully related, but basically locking into larger trends and building momentum through that. Now, what the real tricky part is, and we don't have to talk about it at this point, but like we can talk about it later, is like, how do you then move into your own thing? So let me just give you an example in DeSci. So I told you I kind of came into DeSci, started learning about it, started picking things up about it. And I knew like, as I was sort of gaining some momentum on my personal account, I knew that I needed a next step, but I'm not starting a project. I'm not running a project. I'm not like in that space. So there's nothing for me to kind of launch or whatever. There's like not a lot of pieces for me to buttons for me to push. So what I did was I said, okay, what's the easiest way for us to create a community? And that's where the DeSci Alliance was born. And so I just spun up a community right on X. That way you're not joining something else. There's not something else that I have to manage, like all the reasons why. And just started putting people into a community. Today we have, I don't know, over 1,200 people. I'd say 70% of those are DeSci projects. There's probably about 20% investors and about 10% of like just like people who are just checking things out. Who knows where they're from or what they're doing, but just anons, that come into Web3 communities. And so that was sort of the way that I was able to sort of take some of that momentum from DeSci and push into something that is a little bit more valuable. And now I have sort of that foundation that we can start to launch off. And so now I can talk about it later, but we're working on some specific initiatives that I think will really help to leverage that platform. But that model is the same thing that projects have to do. No matter where you're coming from, you have to try and figure out how do you start to get, tie into something that builds some momentum. And I think one of the mistakes that people make is they think like just because they love their idea and because they think they have a great project, that suddenly everyone else is going to think the same thing. And it just isn't the fact, isn't reality. And you have to start to figure out how to find momentum, tag along with that momentum, and let that momentum pull you into like getting some traction. And then you leverage that traction into growing your brand, project, and your own personal community.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that, Andrew. By the way, also Patrick, Albert, Morgan, whenever you have any thoughts or ideas or, you want like, let's keep it conversational, right? And Patrick, what's your take on this? What's your take on do you think that, how DeSci stacks up right now in terms of kind of the real traction versus the hype that some of the new projects are getting?
Yeah, I think first off, I would retweet what Andrew just said if I could, but we're on the space, so I cannot. You absolutely need to go where the attention is, especially building in crypto and Web3. Like a lot of what's going on here is attention based. So you need to find some momentum and try and ride it and funnel them wherever you can, funnel the attention into your community. Once you have the eyes, then you can dictate what happens to it. Right now, where I think DeSci kind of stacks up in terms of traction versus hype, I think that we have almost no hype in DeSci in this given moment. I think it's like anyone who's paying attention sees that all the tourists have come and gone. And it's really just the people who are dedicated to it / see the vision or are building something and working on something within decentralized science. So I think if you take a look at the people who are here right now, these are the best times to network with people, collaborate with people, and like really build your network, because these are the people who are already here. Like these are the people you want to know. You don't have to worry about scammers as much. Now, obviously, there's always going to be scammers, but yeah, I think we're in a really, really good spot. With that being said,
I want to, question to both you, Patrick and Andrew, because I feel like there's been many times, I've been in crypto since 2017. The successful projects, like you almost like if you don't know about them, like from the like early, like the moment they become mainstream, they just come out from like nowhere, right? And it's like this like 0 to 1 effect that they must have accomplished to, reach escape velocity. And I want to ask you guys, like, have you experienced that from the driver's seat or the front row seat? And I'm curious to know, like, what are like the patterns, what are like the themes that you see when that phenomenon is about to happen?
I mean, go ahead, Patrick.
no, you unmuted first, dude. You got it.
We're racing to the button. Yeah. So like I wanted to follow up just real quick before I answer that on something that Patrick said, which is that there isn't a lot of hype here, and I actually really agree. Which is I actually feel a little weird saying that. I'm like, we're talking about crypto, and I really don't see a ton of hype. What I do think is interesting, and what I do think DeSci faces more is FUD. I think if we were to talk about sort of what's like the noise, I would say there's more FUD than there is hype. And I don't know about you, but for me, that means like double down, triple down, like keep going, right? Because one thing we've known always is that the crypto community is terrible at identifying like long-term value. And so if the crypto community is like FUDing something, you should probably just absolutely like go all in on it. The other thing that I think is really important about this is that it's totally, again, it's utility, it's not speculation. And so because the regulatory environment has changed, and I know that this is like a little bit of a soapbox for me, so I'm not going to like get into it, but like it's extremely important to recognize that there has been an absolutely fundamental shift in the regulatory perspective. On nearly every single call that I was on for the last 5 years, 8 years, there has been a lawyer, there has been a tight conversations about, regulations, In the last year, 6 months, that has not been, it's like, go. Everybody just go. Everyone's like, we're going to keep moving now. You have a major shift in the attitude and perspective from a regulatory environment. And I think that is what's unlocking utility. I think the infrastructure has been there. I think liquidity has been there. The only thing you could do, though, with crypto up to this point was because of the regulatory environment was trade. And one of the major FUD was oh, well, all you guys do is just speculate on meme coins. Well, meme coins was the only thing you could actually do. So everybody who was doing anything meaningful was afraid. And so now there's this major shift. And that's why I think there's this tidal wave of utility coming that's going to just wipe out and reshape how we think about crypto. And of course, the Genius Act and all that sort of stuff. And we can talk about all those things later down the road. Okay, back to your original question. Sorry for the big shift there. I think that it always, for me, goes in stages. And I think it's for me, it's this moment of sort of growth, and then there's a plateau. And there's growth, and there's plateau, and there's growth, and there's plateau. It's never a straight line. Escape velocity is something that, to me, is very easily misunderstood and widely misunderstood in marketing generally. And I think the reason for that is because what a project needs to do is really accurately map the phases of their own growth. It's very common especially for founders, to sort of sit back and think man, I wish everyone would tweet about my project. And the way that I identify escape velocity is if everyone's tweeting about it. If I'm trending on Twitter, that means my project has hit escape velocity. And I just think it's just the wrong way of measuring it. Instead, what I always do is I start at a very, very micro level of a map. And I'll basically say, who are our, ideal first like test users? Who are we thinking about beta? And what I want to do is if you say, hey, we need 50 beta users, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and bring 100, right? And for me, when I say, oh, I've been able to generate enough demand that we created 100 beta testers, we're only accepting 50, that means I double demand. That for me is like, okay, a little bit of growth. Now, the next phase is beta went well. Now we're going to expand to some additional users. Okay. Now, what is that number? What is that number? What is that number? I think with the right map, the right mindset, focusing on the metrics that truly matter, the other stuff takes care of itself. For me, Twitter is noise. Twitter is affirmation. Twitter is validation. Twitter is not the metric. And I know that's really hard for people. When you do it that way, what happens is you drive the volume, like you drive the noise, you drive the attention, and you're not even focused on it. If you take the opposite track, which hundreds of projects do today, only focusing on driving attention, not worrying about actual fundamental metrics, you do the reverse. And you end up playing this card to like everyone and no one cares. And you can't play to everyone. Everybody knows that. But when you try to play crypto Twitter, that's what you end up doing. And so I think that's there's obviously a lot more to talk about in that, but that's sort of the way that I would think about breaking it down and walking through it.
Awesome. I want to reply to that, but I also want to hear Patrick's take on the same question. How does it look like as projects approach escape velocity? If you have any input on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree mostly with what Andrew said. The one thing I do think I vary a little bit on is using X and social platforms to kind of gauge the phase of growth, not on a fundamental level, but rather like on how much attention is there, because you do kind of have to adjust your strategy a little bit depending on how much attention your project is getting. And so that social media radar is really not always important to pay attention to, but when you see it heating up, you might want to ship things a little bit quicker. You might want to post a little bit more content. You might want to just be active and engaging, because you never know who's going to like just accidentally stumble upon what you guys are actually trying to build. Another thing before I hand it back over is you can't maintain the same level of excitement on social media in perpetuity. It will crash, and you just kind of have to be used to it. You have to be okay with the fact that you will absolutely crash in your engagement when the hype cycle leaves.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Super, super valuable. And yeah, definitely have gotten used to the crashes. Social crash, not like they usually correlate with the market crashes as well, but definitely getting used to that. And as like speaking from a founder's perspective, you get sort of numb to it. It's like, okay, this is just happening again. But I really like, Andrew, your take on like mapping your user growth or your general growth. Like, how does it look like at 100, 1,000, 10,000? And so I actually, jotted that down, and we'll reflect on that a little bit more. But so what I want to ask you, Andrew, is how do you, as somebody who was not actively, let's say, building a project, you're more like the community front, and also this question could go to you as well, Patrick. How do you see, for example, in DeFi, like a DeFi user is somebody that trades, that borrows, that lends, that stakes, and it's very general, like literally anybody can do that and interact with a range of different protocols. Whereas in DeSci, you don't my question basically is like, who do you see being the user of DeSci? And is there, let's say, a use case that could be, let's say, applicable to a very general audience to make it feel more like something like DeFi, where literally anybody can interact with it, anybody with like $1 can interact with it? I don't expect you guys to have answers on this, but I mean, if you just like reflected on this, seen it somewhere, or maybe seen like signs of it in some projects, we'd just love to hear what your take is here.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And, one of the things that I've gotten pushback on around some of my rhetoric, because I mean, again, like you have the luxury of literally just like talking about things and no one's like measuring my project's success or not success. Obviously I've been able to build a community here, make some stuff, but a lot of what I'm saying to you is just based on my experience. And so take it for what it's worth and what it costs you for me to do this, which is nothing. I would say that if I was running a project, I'd be thinking about ways to be able to give my viewers, give my users a tangible activity to engage in that would produce a credible metric that I could promote. So here's what I mean by that. When you really step back, think about the metrics that we use to determine a project's reaching escape velocity or growth or scale or blah, 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 blah. Think about what those metrics are. And if you really think about it, most of them are like totally fake. I'm not saying that like what's behind it is fake. I'm just saying that like a metric like a follow or like on posts or whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're really just metrics that the market says, okay, this seems like something's happening here. So what I'd be doing, especially in DeSci, and I think this is really what is really important, is to say if you're in DeSci, if you're somebody who's interested in DeSci and you're interested in like engaging with our community, engaging in posts, whatever it is, I'd be saying to them like, okay, here's something that you can do. I've seen this being done in various different projects. One of them is like picking up litter. It's like, okay, so snap a picture of your litter, post it on, into our channel, tag our account, and you get a point or something. If you get people to like that post or retweet that post, or you get as many points as you get views on a post or something like that, right? Like I would be thinking about ways that they could participate if you're working on hair or working on anything bio, right? Like I'd be thinking about ways, I'd be manufacturing an activity, a tangible activity that these folks could do. Now, here's my proof to that statement. And I say this on every single Spaces that we have. Reddit is an amazing opportunity, I think, for DeSci. Reddit has these little communities of people, some hundreds, 200,000, 1 million, small compared to Reddit, massive compared to DeSci, that are people who are enthusiasts, who are engaged, who are involved around individual topics. And they themselves are there because they want to learn and engage, but also they want to contribute. The thing that DeSci and DeFi have failed at, the thing that crypto has failed at, is allowing community members to contribute. Like that's actually how you gain them. That's actually how you like lock somebody in. Now, in DeFi, you say, okay, that's $1 investment or that's $1 stake. Like that's how we know you're invested in us, right? But in DeSci, I would say have them do some sort of a tangible task. Like literally engage them in research. Maybe you don't use the research. Perfectly fine. Like it doesn't matter. Like have if we're doing, if you're doing something in environment and stuff like that, like have people report on weather or stats or like tell us the smog metric for your area today or this day. Or like let's start a database where we're just like tracking these things. Maybe those metrics don't help you in any way outside of identifying users that are going to contribute and make tangible, real, contributions. And all you're doing is engaging the audience to contribute, to contribute, to contribute. Once they've done that, getting them to put money into a token is a much easier ask. If the first ask is buy our token, but we don't care about what you think, we don't care about what you believe, we don't care, right? I think that's how I'd be thinking about it. And I'd be trying to, incentivize that, not even financially, but through credibility. Think about science. Everybody wants a label. Everybody wants a title. Everybody wants like some sort of recognition, right? Acknowledge them. There are other ways in which to engage. And that's how I'd be thinking about it.
I want to add on to that too, because like it is so critical. If you think about what actually a community is, it's like it's giving people a reason to believe in something. It's giving people a group of like-minded individuals that they can commingle with and just feel like they're a part of something. And so you can't just do that if all you have is a token and you just bought the token and you're like, oh yeah, I'm part of that group, but I never actually do anything there. I'm just like, whatever. If you actually do what Andrew is saying right there, and any founders or anyone working on something crypto related, DeSci related or not, you think about what drives that feeling of community within people, and it is participation and recognition. You have to give them something that they feel like they were a part of it, even if it's super small and you never use it. It's spot on, Andrew. And then you asked, Albert, you asked earlier, who would be the users of DeSci? And I pinned a post that I made back in January to the space here, and I just want to read it because I think if people can conceptualize what I'm saying here, you'll really kind of grasp where things are going.
It's really
Say it again?
I read it and it's really good. I'll let you read it.
Hell yeah. DeFi is a way to fund science. Real-world assets, a way to tokenize IP. NFTs, a way to trade drugs. AI, a way to enhance research. DPIN, a way to collect research data. ZK Proof, a way to harness medical data. Memes, a way to explain the science. And I honestly could have gone on and on and on, but to make the tweet look pretty, I just kept it at that. Every single utility that I can think of in crypto and blockchain, Web3, it all leads to a use case within decentralized science. So the answer is every person on the planet will need decentralized science. They will be users. They will be there at some point. So that's my opinion on it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for this. Let's do a quick room reset, guys. Make sure to retweet this Twitter Spaces. We'd love for you to do that. And also drop any questions in the comments or any comments at all that you want us to reflect back to during this Twitter Spaces. That would be absolutely amazing. I know for a fact that Morgan wanted to chip in to this conversation before we move on to some other topics.
Yeah, there was just a couple of things I wanted to say, although it may be a little bit out of context now. But the first thing was what Andrew said about... Oh, wait, sorry. 1 second. My doorbell was ringing. Sorry, continue.
Okay, no worries. Well, guys, if you're just joining us, this is Proof of DeSci, and today's episode is all about the power of DeSci communities and creators. We've got That Investor, we've got Andrew Hemingway as well with us, and we're talking about the creator culture, KOLs in DeSci hype, whether there is one, whether it's just gone, if it's going to happen again, and all things around DeSci. And Morgan's here.
No, I just wanted to comment on the comment Andrew made about FUD. I think it's really strange to me. Like, you look at other crypto verticals, right? And the level of due diligence on most of the projects there is so alarmingly low. And people are really happy to put their money into anything without fully understanding it, and quite often jumping on a narrative or some kind of hype. And then you look at the FUD that has been going around in DeSci, and it's like, you know, some of it's valid, of course, but a lot of it is putting DeSci under such a significant pressure and oftentimes quite an unfair lens, right? Like, there's been a lot of talk about, lots of money's going in, lots of funding's going in. Where are the results? Where's the impact? And, we're talking about science, right? It takes time. It takes a lot of money. It's a complicated thing. And of course, the science is happening. It is in progress. We try our best to make as many updates about the progress of it as possible. But the reality is, like, it just takes a long time. But, when you look at some of the other projects that people are happy to put bags of their money into, they don't even ask these kind of questions, right? They're not putting the same level of kind of due diligence on the projects they're putting money into as they are in DeSci. So I do find it a little bit strange. Maybe it just comes with the nature and even the target audience. Maybe the investors in DeSci are typically people who like think about things a little bit more skeptical. I don't know, but I do think it's interesting that a lot of the criticism we see doesn't even come to some of the other projects that, by even at first glance, like, their founders are all anonymous. You don't know who anyone is. The quality of their marketing is, quite poor. And they have billions or hundreds of billions in trading volume over a certain period. So
I think you definitely get more scrutinized and criticized the more transparent and legit looking that you are, or like the more professional looking you are in crypto/Web3, the more criticism you will receive, because you're like, maybe it's like you look too much normally, so there must be some shady scam going on here. And like, if the more transparent you are, the more, areas that people have to like poke holes into, for example. Maybe this is just like a virus of the current crypto ecosystem that is hopefully not permanent.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're going to have your camera on in a meeting? Must be a scammer.
Must be.
It's so backwards.
Yeah, so I think that I understand, and I'm hearing this same thing from a lot of founders. I honestly think that this is very, very temporary. And it goes back to sort of what I was talking about, this like major like ground shift that has occurred, and the shift towards utility. Like, because right now, the people who make noise in crypto Twitter are still people who are tied to the old paradigm. The old paradigm, which is like, we're going to speculate, we can run stuff up, we can bot coins, we can bot tokens, blah, 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 and I can get out and leave retail with the bag. Like, that really is like the noise that has occurred across crypto. Now, I know there are like real legit people who are out there trying to do real legit things, but like, there isn't a actual real legit person who is, I think from a crypto perspective, like actively flooding other industries, especially industries with the growth of that can occur here. Where you really hear a lot of the FUD, I think, from on the crypto side is like people who are just like token go up, like that, and that's their only thing they're ever going to talk about. No, and I'm just telling you, like their life expectancy here is very, very short. Not like years, like months. There's a fundamental shift that has occurred already, and the implications are just rolling out at the moment, but will be absolutely significant. And speculation is going to go completely away in this space. On the other side of that, when you think about the industries, even the industries that investor just mentioned, like even even on the DeFi side, like DeFi, you can't do, like you're not really competing with other industries. Now I know you're going to say, oh, you compete with banks or finance it, blah blah blah, but like you're really not, right? Like no one changed their bank account to be all on chain. No one changed, no one like stopped investing or stopped saving. No one stopped like doing all this stuff. Everybody was everybody that's involved in crypto at this moment, the vast majority outside of the 1%, are playing on the margins, right? It's like the money that I have extra, I'm going to use and like speculate on some tokens or do some things like this. No one's using crypto as like a day-to-day to replace banks. There's all this talk about it, but like no one's doing that. You didn't really threaten anybody. When DePIN came along, they didn't really threaten anybody. I mean, decentralized compute, maybe, sure. Like, was Amazon like running scared? Like, where you're upsetting an industry? Like, I don't think that's necessarily a true thing. You're sort of like creating something new. Even like think about like DAI. Like AI is different. It's new. Like, will it have implications across all the industries? Yeah, of course. But like right now, it's in like the honeymoon phase where it's like it's not really directly competing against a specific thing. When we roll out DeSci, though, you're touching on an industry that has been so hyper insulated and dominated by the ivory towers of institutions that has been unquestionably, like, has never been challenged, has absolutely silenced anyone who would question the institutional method and model of operation. You have this DeSci thing. Even Morgan, I would even challenge you, like in the way that you talked about it, like saying like, well, science is long, it takes a long time and it takes a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. Man, I think that plays into sort of like the old school, like, that plays into the institutional hands. And I would like push back against that. I mean, Ethan at Curetopia is the absolutely legit scientist with every credential necessary, who has brought products to market at a fraction of the price, at 5 times the speed. Now, I know you can't do that across the board, but I would be like leaning into that, I think, a little bit to say, yeah, science is slow and science does take a lot of money because of all of the barriers that have been created. DeSci eliminates those. And that's why I think DeSci gets the most FUD, because it's like, you can't touch science. Like, we're approaching something that's kind of a holy grail. And I think that makes it different. And so I think you are going to see FUD, and you're going to continue to get some FUD here because you're doing something that is like different, and I think going to be extremely impactful. And the more FUD you get, the harder I push. Like, I think when you get FUD, you're on the right path. And I think it's like the louder that they chirp, the more closer you are to breaking through.
I 100% agree. The funding and like the expense of science is definitely very inflated, and I think there's lots of impact that DeSci can have over this, even just from like data collection, right, is something that DeSci can do with like very low friction, very scalably, and actually like incentivize people to do it. And this is something that, like, if you do through the traditional market, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Like, there's companies that spend hundreds of thousands to send people out and go and like take samples of the water sources, or like, take some soil samples or whatever. Like, they're literally paying hundreds of thousands for these things. And this is something that can be done almost with zero initial funding, right? Like, if you have a mission, if people care about that mission, if they believe in this project, you can launch a token and start incentivizing people immediately to start collecting samples. And then you collectively build something that's valuable and will hopefully eventually compensate people. So yeah, 100% agree with that. I also wanted to kind of point out a article that very aligned with this point on the inflated expense of science and some of the big problems. So I'm going to link that article in the thread here. And yeah, if anyone's interested in that, go give it a read.
Amazing. And yeah, so we've been talking about the hype factor. We've been talking about the current state of DeSci and kind of what's working, what's not, what's kind of people understanding of what we can do and how it works within DeSci. Even though, with people, one of the most important probably person in crypto, CZ, right? Like he's really bullish about DeSci. He's really outspoken around what he thinks that DeSci is going to be the kind of next thing that's going to onboard people into crypto. That DeSci is actually incredibly bullish, but it doesn't really seem to be working that well as it comes to, like, let's say memes. Whenever, CZ tweets a picture of his dog, there's memes popping out on Solana, on BC, and they instantly kind of go into like 50, 100 million. Do you think that DeSci projects often struggle to maintain this kind of momentum after initial hype cycle? I want to go back to this question and actually ask you whether you've seen some ways of building authentic, sustainable communities in this space, and what can you say from taking some observations from other ecosystems? What can be kind of copied and pasted into DeSci to help DeSci projects grow and break those barriers to the broader crypto community? Do you think, and this, sorry, I want to kind of finalize my thought process here. Do you think that DeSci is too complex for just random guys to really understand, to do this kind of due diligence? Because obviously initially people had to take this massive step to learn blockchain, to learn different ecosystems, to be able to perform due diligence when they're doing research on projects that they're interested in, they're investing in. Do you think that this is also the case, Patrick?
I think it's a pretty complicated answer to that, to be honest. If you look at kind of the growth metrics across crypto as far as the new users who have been onboarded this cycle, it's not nearly to the same scale as the last couple of cycles in as far as like a percent gain. And I know we're a lot bigger, so it's not going to keep growing at the same scale. But a lot of the people here in crypto, and I'm speaking broadly to crypto, not specific to DeSci, just because DeSci is built on top of crypto and blockchain. A lot of the people here are the same people from last cycle. A lot of what happened last cycle was a lot of insiders dumping and VCs dumping on people, and the Terra Luna collapse, which just wiped out tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of liquidity, and just like people got wrecked. And so that cycle, they were doing all their due diligence and looking into the projects and trying to pick the best fundamentals, and they still got burnt. This cycle, it seems like everyone's just like, you know what? I'm just going to gamble. I'm just going to go ahead and buy that meme coin because it's funny. And you know what? I made money on it, so let's go. Or I saw someone who made money on it, because I don't think many people are making money on the meme coins. But regardless, the point stands. I think a lot of the people who are here right now just don't care to pay attention to the fundamentals as much. I think a lot of people are just in it to try and speculate and make a 1000x and just retire their bloodline, even though that's not how it works. So yeah, I really don't think people are taking the time to research the fundamentals behind DeSci to understand that it is something that is continuing to grow every single week. All of the builders within DeSci are continuing to launch new IP or fund more research or just expand like crazy. Like every single week, I'm finding stuff that I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. This gives me a lot of conviction. But most people right now, I just don't think care.
And just wanted to revert back to the initial question. What are some ways you've seen authentic, sustainable communities being built in this space? Because, you and Andrew are some form of obviously KOLs in DeSci, and there's not that many of your kind, basically. There's a lot of speculators, there's a lot of shillers and meme influencers in this space, but it takes much more knowledge, to be able to provide crypto users and DeSci folks with this kind of value, right? Like you're not just shillers, you actually bring value to the space.
Yeah, I went on a bit of a rant and didn't even answer the question, but I think consistency, however you want to interpret that. When you're doing anything, you just need to kind of put your head down and continue to be consistent. So if you're trying to make content to grow your community, just consistently putting out new content, go live every week, every day, whatever. Make your content. If you're building a real company in biotech. Just keep being consistent and showing off what you're doing. And the people who it needs to reach will reach them.
Awesome, thank you. And Albert wants to...
Yeah, I want to throw like a bit of a curveball question to Andrew and Patrick. And I mean, you guys can be completely brutally honest. And I think the path to growth is you have to allow yourself to take some criticism and hopefully some constructive feedback as well. But what do you guys think ValleyDAO is doing right now, and what is it that ValleyDAO could do even better in terms of its marketing approach, the way that we communicate what we do? Yeah, essentially everything. Like, yeah, would love to hear your input there.
That is a difficult question. I think you guys do a really good job with posting consistently and being out there. And you guys are consistently putting out new projects. Like, you guys are hitting the mark on consistency. One thing that I kind of wish I saw more was a clear and concise location that I could go as someone who wants to see all the updates on the projects that you guys have, like Flow and Coco Zero and Carta Forge and Hempy, who's listening in the chat right now. Like, all these projects, I want to be able to just streamline the access to updates and information on it.
Wonderful. Thanks.
I mean, so this is a limited view, and I think that's what Patrick's sort of saying. It's like, obviously, we're familiar with what you guys are doing and what you guys are up to, but certainly this isn't like a expert level review of your activity. But here's what I would say: I think that you guys have been not well. First of all, I'm just very direct. Okay, so you have to just understand that this comes from a place of absolute like respect and admiration for being founders and all that sort of stuff, all that nice stuff to say. I don't think you've been very effective in delivering a singular message that motivates engagement. Like, if I come to ValleyDAO, if I'm introduced to ValleyDAO or see tweets about ValleyDAO, I get sort of a bunch of messages. I don't necessarily feel like I know exactly what it is, what the mission is, that's spoken to me or communicated to me in a way that like I can emotionally get invested in. And I think that is like, I think that's the feedback that I would give to you is like, I'd be dialing that piece in, thinking about, the positioning, thinking about how that fits, obviously the marketplace, thinking about who that, who the end user is that you're speaking to, and figuring out how to communicate that to that individual person. And then it's thinking about, okay, now how do we find more of these people? How do we start to expand that audience with a message that we know works? So, you guys have obviously been around for a while. You've been in the space. You're active in the space, but I feel like traction has sort of lacked or been not necessarily been a real strong suit. And I think when you boil it down, it comes down to that specific thing. It's like, what is the singular statement that attracts me, that draws me in, that engages me and moves me to follow and to like and to continuously like stay engaged in it.
You need to go flat out and tell us that the climate clock has, what is it that scientists use or whatever? They say we have like 50 seconds left until the doomsday. Tell us the planet is dying and you guys are the only solution.
Awesome, guys. I really appreciate the feedback here, and particularly Andrew, like, thank you for your being just straight up honest, and we'll definitely take the feedback to heart and just continue to try to do an even better job.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you for being up front, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I've taken a lot of notes, so thank you so much for that. I also want to open up this space to our audience. If there's any questions, guys, that you want to ask Patrick, Andrew, Albert, Morgan, feel free to request to speak, and I'll get you on here. In the meantime, guys, please think of your final thoughts that you want to share. I know Patrick wants to also talk about his live stream and the content that he's producing. I know that Andrew is definitely going to want to tell us a little bit more about the DeSci Alliance. But before we do that, before we actually wait, if there's anyone from the audience that wants to jump in, I've got a question for both of you, Patrick and Andrew. So you kind of help surface complex ideas with much more clarity in DeSci. What advice would you give to both DeSci founders and DeSci enthusiasts that want to start creating content and maybe become more public on socials around DeSci, Patrick or Andrew?
I would say, I would start by saying this. The challenge that a scientist has is that they think micro. And I think when it comes to content, you have to actually think macro. And I know, around this is different than what I would say to like a brand. Right? If I'm talking to a brand, there's a strategy to that. If you're saying, hey, how do just enthusiasts become more visible and build up more of a following? I mean, dude, if you look at no offense to Patrick and to my content, man, a lot of it is just like being a cheerleader. Like a lot of it is just saying, like, I don't know that either of us are like making like high in depth research content around molecules and like discovering new ways to whatever, or recreate the human heart in a synthetic lab. Like that's not what we're doing. We're literally just like promoting the broader space. And it's what I said at the very beginning, which is we're tagging on to something that has momentum. And I think that's really what I would be like thinking about doing. And then if I was just an individual today starting, I would do this. I would say I would like follow crypto Twitter. I'd find 3, 4, 5 projects that are moving, that have momentum, and I would literally just start engaging with their content. What I have found to be true is that with very, very little effort, the largest projects in the world, like I'm talking about, projects that have 30 people on their social team. Like I've been a part of those. I've helped to run those. Like, it's amazing how much of their content goes without any comment or any sort of like identification. One of the things that I do so much is I'll be scrolling, and if I see a post that I enjoy, maybe I like it, but I see it doesn't have any comments, or I'll be the first person to comment, I'll jump on it, literally just for the sake of like being the first person to comment. I know Patrick does the same thing because I see it. Like we sometimes do it to each other. Like we'll engage, and it's like if there's 100 comments, I don't want to comment, right? Because it's just like whatever. If you comment though, when you're one of the first ones, what happens is you get on the radar of people really early because it's a vanity metric that people love, brands love. It gets upheld. And so for brand, I'd be active, I'd be engaging, I'd be trying to be first commenter, I'd be trying to like helping in that way. You can connect with the team very easily and immediately like can turn into something. And if it was like trying to connect with with us or with other influencers or your favorite scientist who's tweeting, I mean they're so accessible, and it's just literally just thinking about what are the metrics that they're watching and then playing to those metrics and getting identified and retweeted and followed.
Andrew is all about those metrics. I absolutely love it. You got to be able to calculate everything, see where you can improve, which kind of gets into where I would add on to what Andrew was saying. And I completely agree with what he's saying. Also treat it like a scientific experiment. Like don't just shoot content out in the dark and have no purpose or no like reiterative process to like learn and grow from it. Like go back every week, review everything you did, see what worked, see what didn't, do what worked more, and abandon what didn't. In the early days, especially when you're just starting out making content, do literally anything that comes to mind, because most of the time your content's not going to get seen anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Just do it and then see how it performs, and you'll be surprised. You'll really be surprised.
Awesome. And Patrick, thank you for that. Rapid fire, basically your final thoughts. It's your time to show your live stream and your content.
Amazing. All right. So I said that my one condition to come on here was that I got to show my live stream, because I go live Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I pushed it back to 1:15 today so that I could do this X space, because I figured it would be a lot of positive value. And I'm very excited to say that I was correct in that assessment. There was a lot of good conversation here. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate everyone who was in the chat listening as well. Implore you to come check out the live stream. We talk about decentralized science, obviously, but we also cover a lot of different topics around crypto markets and just financial markets as a whole. My name is That Investor on all social media except for TikTok, because they banned my account.
Well, that's sad. I hope you're going to recover it somehow. Andrew, your final thoughts? And what can you tell us also about DeSci Alliance?
Yeah, so I mean, just real quickly, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity. I really respect builders, guys who are willing to jump and to take that risk and to take on that challenge and to move things forward. I have nothing but respect and admiration. And maybe one day I'll have an idea that would be good enough to do something with. But until then, I'm just happy to support and to be a cheerleader. Look, I again, I've sort of explained to you kind of where I'm coming from. The DeSci Alliance is a Twitter community. Would love to have anybody who is a founder, funder, or a friend of DeSci join us there, participate in the content that's being shared and being created. There's lots of various opportunities. The next phase of the DeSci Alliance, I think, could be of interest, which is that we are starting to formulate a small group of DeSci and TradSci thinkers, and we are going to be basically kicking off an initiative to define what is DeSci. What are the tenets that make something DeSci or not DeSci, and to help to really create sort of a foundation for that, so that I think it helps investors, it helps projects, it helps everybody kind of say, this is what DeSci is, and I can now identify where DeSci projects exist or don't. I think that's sort of the next iteration for us, and a project that we are really heavily engaged in. But, otherwise, my DMs are open. I love to talk to other people who have ideas. Happy to weigh in on any topic that you guys have of interest, and really, again, just appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the things that I'm super passionate about.
We appreciate you.
100%, Andrew. Thank you so much. And Morgan, whilst you're actually here, maybe some final thoughts from your side. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what can our community expect from next week's DeSci Berlin and the whole journey, and what can people expect from Flow in the coming weeks?
Yeah, so I think if anyone's been following what we've been up to, you'll know that we've been very hard at work. Things have been moving pretty quickly. So this week marks the last week of the Bio AI Hackathon, which means we are wrapping up our submission. Yeah, hopefully we'll get everything in by Friday. The deadline was actually moved until Sunday afternoon, so we do have an extra day or so to finish things up. But yeah, what we've been up to in the last 2 weeks is actually implementing a knowledge graph system to the projects on Flow. For those people that maybe aren't so familiar with what we're up to, I won't go into all the details right now, just that I did link one article already, which is a part 1. There's a part 2 coming, I think maybe even next week. But yeah, that article kind of sets the foundation for why we're building Flow, and yeah, what are some of the challenges that we want to address with this new research platform. So go check out that article. And of course, you can reach us in the Discord, Twitter, or wherever to ask us questions. And if you are attending DeSci Berlin in person, then we would love to meet you and we would love to speak with you. If we've seen you before, to reconnect. If we haven't, to start your journey and introduction into the world of DeSci. So yeah, myself, Gunjan, and Tom will be there in person. Albert, unfortunately, won't be joining us. There'll be plenty to talk about, plenty to get our teeth into, and we will be presenting what we've been building. So we'll be doing a public demo on the 11th. So yeah, join us for that.
Amazing, guys. Stay tuned for next week, as we're going to just throw a lot of DeSci Berlin content at you. And Albert, last but not least, what can you tell us, your final thoughts to this conversation? And maybe you can tell us a little update from ValleyDAO, or just to remind people why they should become a Grow token holder.
I'm super bullish about Hempy. Hempy is, the researchers there are shipping really fast and exceeding a lot of the expectations. We will be releasing some X-ray, not X-ray images, some high definition microscope images of the fibers after we have treated them. And the difference is very, very clear. And so super excited about that one. I'm going to keep it short and sweet to not overwhelm everyone. But if you haven't seen Hempy yet and the research going on there, definitely check it out. He's right here in the little bubble. And yeah, I'll leave it right there.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us today. Once again, all the guys in the audience, please go and make sure to follow Patrick, aka That Investor, Andrew, Albert, Morgan, obviously ValleyDAO. And that's a wrap on this episode of Proof of DeSci. Big thanks once again to Patrick, to Andrew, to Albert and Morgan for dropping real insights on what it takes to build a community, to build credibility and momentum in DeSci. Whether you're an anon with a Substack, a founder, bootstrapping biotech, or just curious how research works, how funding and means in DeSci are colliding, you're part of this movement. So well done. If something in this episode sparked a thought, tweet it, remix it, build on it, and make sure to follow and retweet, of course. And if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, follow us and share this podcast with someone else, with one person. That's all it takes to make a difference. We're just getting started. And guys, don't stop. Let's keep pushing forward and let's keep proving that DeSci works. Thank you once again.